So our first category for kids is for early readers.
All right. So I am actually going to suggest two for this category. One of them a really early reader and the other one almost a beginning chapter book. So the first, not a new series, but if you're not familiar with beginning readers, I thought it would be worth mentioning if you're looking to gift to a young beginning reader. And that's the Elephant and Piggy series by Mo Willems. You can't go wrong. Any book in the series would be wonderful to get as a gift. Again, especially for the beginning reader. So there's very few words on a page, a lot of word repetition similar to like the Dr. Seuss books, but they're just super sweet. They play off each other, and there's little lessons in each one of the books as well. A lot of stories about friendship and sharing and things like that. So that is the first recommendation. The second one that I would suggest for a reader that is more independently reading and starting to explore chapter books is the Mercy Watson series by very well-known author Kate DiCamillo. So Mercy Watson is a pig, and she lives with the Watsons, and she considers herself every bit as much a family member as the human family members. And she tends to get herself in little interesting, precarious situations every now and then. But of course, the stories all end very well. And usually with Mercy enjoying a helping of hot buttered toast, which is one of the reasons I love this book series so much, is because I also have an affinity for hot buttered toast. So super cute. And again, good for the reader that's, ready to venture out into sort of early chapter books.
So I have not read this book, but I am dying to read it. It looks absolutely hilarious. It's called Penguin Problems, and it's by Jory John and Lane Smith, both of whom are very well known in their field for being really funny. Lane Smith, when I was a kid, I read The Stinky Cheese Man, and Lane Smith is the illustrator for that. So I knew it was going to be good. This is about a penguin whose mission is to set humans straight about kind of the real life story of a penguin living in Antarctica. And apparently it's not all it's cracked up to be. So he is basically just constantly complaining throughout the book. And it looks really, really funny if you have that kind of a sense of humor, which I really do. The illustrations look really, really fun. So you basically have him complaining, which doesn't sound exciting, but it is. And then at the end, he meets a wise walrus who maybe sheds some new light on his situation. I think ultimately it seems like a really funny book that everybody would relate to. I think we all maybe know somebody in our lives who tends to complain a bit. So I think it'll be fun for kids, but fun for parents who are reading it to their kids as well.
So I'm going to recommend The Biscuit Books by Alyssa Capicilli. What I like about these books are that they're available in like gift sets. So they come in, you can get them in like these little boxes that have a little handle, and you can kind of take them on the go. I actually bought these for my niece, who is a beginning reader, and she loves them. She takes them with her wherever she goes. And if you have a child in your life that likes animals, because I know she loves animals, so the appeal of having a puppy main character, I think, was a huge hit and really inspired her to sit down and read these books, to learn about all the different adventures that Biscuit goes on in each of the different books. They're really nice for those beginning readers, and I can't say enough good things about them.
You mentioned, Jacqueline, there are so many of the beginner reader sets that are available in the little carry boxes, which I think just adds another layer of appeal to young readers because they're so portable and fun, and who doesn't like something in a little box with a handle?
Amelia Bedelia, you can get a little suitcase of Amelia Bedelia, and they're hilarious. And I don't know, I mean, they're and Amelia Bedelia is really cool too. Like,
yes,
she doesn't take guff. How about that? Yeah, I love those. So they're old school, but I think that they appeal to kids today too.
And I think there's so many on another layer. They're super funny, obviously, but there's a whole lot of lessons about language in those books because she takes
Right.
everything so literally. Like,
Uh-huh.
I think she makes a sponge cake in one book and it's made out of like sponges. So I think there's a lot of room to talk and have fun with words.
Right. Yeah, they're great. I love Amelia Bedelia. So
So our next category is going to be picture
Uh-oh.
books.
all right, so I have a hard time selecting books to suggest because there are so many. So I'm cheating on a lot of these categories, and this is one of them. For picture books, I'm suggesting anything by the Fan brothers, Gary, Eric, and Devin. But the one I'm going to talk about today is the newest one. All three of them collaborated on, called The Barnabas Project. A couple other titles that would be good, I think, for gifting are The Night Gardener and Ocean Meets Sky. Probably one of the most beautiful picture books ever, in my opinion. But The Barnabas Project just came out this year. And it's the story of Barnabas, who is an engineered pet. But he came out not quite right. So he's part elephant and part mouse. And so he has sort of the features of both. He's super cute, but because he's not perfect, he ends up in the basement of the Perfect Pets shop with a lot of other sort of engineered pets gone wrong, so to speak. They're labeled failed projects. So he lives in this tiny little bell jar in the basement of the Perfect Pet shop, but he dreams of, one day escaping and going out into the world. He and his fellow projects, devise a plan and to become free. We'll just leave it at that. Super, super cute. The pets are adorable. The illustrations, like all of their other books, are just phenomenal and amazing. And I think it would make an excellent picture book gift for the young person in your life. I think even all the way up to, a second or third grader would appreciate the story and the illustrations in this book.
Or an adult.
Or an adult. I absolutely love it. I think it's fabulous.
So I wanted to recommend an author as well. I discovered him pretty recently and I was absolutely thrilled. I'm recommending anything by Terry Border, who uses photos of manipulated, like real life objects on a stage as his images. I think they're really, really clever, and all of them have really fun stories and usually have a good message. The one that I have with me is Christmas themed, Merry Christmas Peanut. I want to show off a couple of shirts, but I think they're so cool. Here's their Christmas feast. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh yeah, so cute.
Anyway, I love his books. Peanut Butter and Cupcake is a fun one about friendship. There's one about the first day of school, about being a big brother, big sister. Yeah, they're awesome. So I think you can't go wrong with Terry Border.
So the picture book I'm going to suggest is Bear Came Along by Richard T. Morris.
I love it.
I love this book so much. I remember when we got it at the library and we seriously passed it around and all read it. It was so cute and funny. It's just a really sweet story about friendship and community. There's a river and Bear is traveling along the river, and along the way he meets different friends and they have adventures, and it's clever. It's a really clever little story, and it teaches important things that you don't even realize that you're learning because it's just so cute. And the illustrations are so
Does
pretty.
it have a vertical flip or a fold out? Yeah.
I ended up buying this as a gift for my goddaughter, and I couldn't wait for her to read it. So fun. So great. I loved it.
So I found a picture book to suggest, and it is called Snail Crossing by Corey R. Tabor. And it's funny because I think books should be funny, especially if you have to read them over and over and over again. and it's about an escargot who doesn't have very much get up and go. But he sees lettuce on the other side of the road and decides he's got to slither over there.
So our next category is for
Okay.
the nonfiction reader.
All right, so I'm going to recommend a book called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. And again, this is a young reader's edition of the book. There is an adult version available. It is by William Kamkwamba and Brian Mueller. William is actually the boy in the story that harnessed the wind. So it tells the story of how he was growing up in Malawi during the famine and droughts in the early 2000s. And when he was, I think, around 12 years old, he could no longer go to school because his family couldn't afford the fees to send him. And that was when he would have made the transition like into middle school. So he ended up going into the library of the primary school, sneaking into the library and just reading everything he could get his hands on, especially things about mechanical engineering and electrical engineering. He starts to tinker with small electronics like radios and things like that. And eventually he's able to design a windmill to bring electricity, which in turn would bring water to his little tiny village. And he's just using the resources available to him, scrap metal and odds and ends pieces, from around the village. So the really kind of cool, fun thing, like this could have happened and no one ever heard about it, but his story like somehow began to spread, and he eventually gave a TED talk on it as a, I think, older teen. And from there, it just sort of exploded. And he ended up coming to the United States. He graduated from Dartmouth College not too long ago, and is doing amazing things now. So this was actually a battle book a few years ago, I think 3 years ago maybe. And just a really well told story, very inspirational. It's sort of one of those make something out of nothing kind of stories, I think, but with a bigger message. So it's called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. There was also a Netflix, I think, did a movie last year. Came out. So lots of fun tie-ins there.
So I would like to recommend How We Got to the Moon, which is just a stunning book. If you have kids interested in science or math or the space race, definitely give this book a look because it's just gorgeous. And it basically answers any question you could possibly have about the space race, about designing rockets and the launch vehicle, spacecrafts, how you stay alive in space. But what I also love is that it profiles like hundreds of thousands of the unsung heroes that you don't usually hear about. So who helped contribute to this, going to the moon. Like the engineers and the factory workers and the seamstresses and the mathematicians. And it really does a good job, I think, of highlighting diversity. I don't know. And the illustrations are just, I wish I could just read this book to you guys because it's so cool. They have these really fun diagrams. And I think the illustrations too, there's so much information that's packed into this book, but it never feels overwhelming because it's just so well done in terms of the imagery and the layout. It often presents a lot of the, I guess, scientific portions in a problem solution format, which I also think works really well for this book. Yeah, overall, just a gorgeous book, and I think it would be a great gift for anyone interested in science.
The book that I picked just now is The Pilot and the Little Prince, The Life of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I love this book, and I forgot about this book until just now. This is if Antoine de Saint-Exupéry he wrote The Little Prince, the beloved children's classic, translated from French into so many different languages. And this is a picture biography book about his life. He was a French aviation pilot. That factors into the story of The Little Prince. So, you know, he kind of writes about that experience. But Peter Sis has such excellent illustrations. I don't know what I like more, the story or the pictures. But it's the story of how he started out as an air pilot delivering mail by plane. And it talks about flying over the deserts and the mountains and through storms and how he tried to break all these records. And he was actually like a super interesting person, in addition to kind of like the heroic stuff that he did. It's such an interesting way to tell a story about a person. And I love the book The Little Prince, so this was a really cool addition to that. So if you've read The Little Prince, you might like this as like a kind of addition to that series.
All right, so my book that I picked is called Equality's Call. Did I say that right? And it's the story of voting rights in America, and it is by Deborah Deason, who you may know as the author of the Pout Pout Fish series. But this is very different in that it's, and very topical and very timely. It's the story of voting rights in the United States, and yet, which sounds dry, but it's really, the illustrations are really cool, and it rhymes. Hello. And it's really good. It would work as a read aloud for a younger kid. It would be interesting to a slightly older kid. It's interesting for adults, really. It's, as I said, it's super timely with what's going on. The final line of it is, the journey's not over, the work hasn't ended, democracy's dream must be constantly tended. And I would say that that's pretty topical right now. So yeah, I highly recommend this book. Way to go, Deb, you rule. 2 thumbs up.
So our next category is board book readers.
For the board book category, I am going to also recommend an author. I'll specifically talk about one that might be the more appropriate one for holiday gift giving. But the author is Leslie Patricelli. She's sort of famous in the board book publishing world. But she has a book called Fa La La, which is, of course, a Christmas themed book. Some of her other titles are No, No, Yes, Yes, and Yummy, Yucky. So they've been around for a long time. They're not new. They're sort of board book classics, but they're super, super appealing to very little ones. Nice, bright, colorful, fun illustrations. And I think just a side note on board books, something to think about when you're purchasing board books as a gift is, I think that I would suggest purchasing books that are published as board books, as opposed to looking for a board book edition of a picture book, if that makes sense. Not that those aren't great too, but if you're looking to purchase something that's specifically for like a baby or very young toddler, again, those that are published just as board books are probably going to be more enjoyed.
So I went with the board book Your Light by Erin Becker. And this is a book that's meant to introduce babies to colors. But I just thought it was a gorgeous book and can be a really interactive reading experience. Josepha let me borrow your copy, Mindy.
Ah.
Here it is. And it just uses these translucent die cut circles. So you can hold them up to the light. I think you can have a lot of fun with this book, and it has a really beautiful message as well. So I thought it would be a fun gift.
So the book that I chose is Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram X. Kendi. I read Stamped with Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi, and I loved it so much. And I have it on my list to read Stamped from the beginning. And so, you know, why not just add Anti-Racist Baby to that as well as books that I'd like to read more about, because Ibram X. Kendi is amazing in the way that he structures his writing, and it's very understandable. This has gotten so much buzz so talked about. It's a way to introduce children to anti-racist concepts, uproot racism in society. It's nice to like have conversations and start that kind of young, but it's not too heavy. It's very bold in color and it's playful. It's just a really nice way to introduce the concept of anti-racism, and uses very specific language to get that conversation going. So, our next category is for the graphic novel reader.
All right. So the book I'm going to talk about is New Kid because I've read that one, but the companion novel to it, or graphic novel to it, just came out, I think, in October, November, maybe. So the book that I'm going to talk about is New Kid by Jerry Craft. And it's the story of a young boy, Jordan, who is a 7th grader, and he's an artist. He likes to draw cartoons. He'd love to go to art school, but his parents end up enrolling him in a private school because of his academic ability. But he has to leave his neighborhood to attend a school where he's one of the only kids of color in his grade. So he leaves his apartment every morning to go to this sort of prestigious academy, and it really is the story of him feeling very torn between who he is and where he fits in, because he struggles with what his friends will think of him, his neighborhood friends, if they know that he's going to this prestigious school, and he doesn't really reveal his true self to his friends or his classmates, at the school either. So I think it would have appeal to really any, I think all kids at one point or another have sort of had that feeling of whether or not they fit in and how much to reveal of themselves safely to, sort of mold other people's opinions of them. So again, that's called New Kid by Jerry Craft.
I went with a graphic novel series that I would say is for the younger graphic novel reader, called Chronicles of Claudette. And this is several years old, actually, and I was surprised I hadn't heard of it. But it's so funny. It's so fun, so funny. It's actually a fantasy series or an adventure series. Here's the first one. This is Claudette. That's her brother Gaston and her best friend Marie. I think the characters are one of the best things about this book, by the way. But the main idea is it's set around Claudette, who is a young girl who she's very brave and feisty, and she wants to become a dragon slayer and a monster hunter like her father. But she's inhibited by the fact that she lives in this very small village that she thinks is very boring. So she enlists the help of her 2 friends, seen on the cover. And they go out seeking adventure and trying to find any kind of monster that would threaten the village. So it's action-packed. I think it's full of fun. And like I said earlier, I think one of the best things is the characters. You have Claudette, who's like a tomboy. She's very feisty and spunky. She speaks her mind. She's brave to the point of being reckless. Her best friend Marie is an aspiring princess, but she realizes that it's really her intelligence and her cunning that gets her through. And then Gaston, he might be my favorite. He's a bit more on the timid side. He's a bit nervous and apprehensive about the whole adventure quest-seeking endeavor that his sister drags him into. But his aspiration is to become a pastry chef. He loves cooking. So I think he's really sweet. And what I also love about the characters is, one, I think kids are going to find something that they identify with because they're so diverse. And 2, they all seem to sort of defy the traditional gender stereotypes in some way. I thought that was really cool. What else can I say? The illustrations are really fun, especially when it comes to the depictions of the characters themselves. I think it really captures their expressions and kind of the fun nature of the book.
So the book that I'm suggesting is The Tea Dragon Society by Katie O'Neill. This book is so sweet. It's so gentle. It's kind of a manga-esque style of graphic novel, but not fully. It just the look of it has that kind of manga quality, but oh, it's so cute. Um, it follows Greta. She's a blacksmith apprentice, and one day in the marketplace, she finds a tea dragon and learns, it kind of gets involved in learning the dying art of caring for tea dragons. And she learns about this from some of the local tea shop owners, and she befriends them, and they have someone that they take care of. Her name is Minette, and they kind of become friends, and it's just this really sweet story of friendship and caring and like animal tending and tea parties. It's so charming. I love the style of animation. It's all kind of done in like softer colors, and it's just super sweet. Our final category for chapter book readers or series readers.
All right. Yeah. So the book I'm going to recommend is actually a biographical novel. I don't know if that's a thing. I think it's a thing.
We'll take it.
I'm going to make it a thing. It's not nonfiction, technically, but it's called Becoming Muhammad Ali, and it is by two powerhouse authors, James Patterson and Kwame Alexander. So it is the story of Cassius Clay and how he becomes Muhammad Ali. So it is biographical in that sense, but obviously the conversations and things aren't necessarily exactly how things went down, so to speak. But the really cool thing about it is, so it's written in rounds, like boxing rounds, and also in alternating voices. So James Patterson writes as Cassius Clay's childhood best friend, Lucky Wakely, and then Kwame Alexander writes alternating, not chapters, but alternating voices as Muhammad Ali. So and forgot this too. The Muhammad Ali, Kwame Alexander portions of the book are written in verse. So very, very cool. I was thrilled to find out that he actually reads the audiobook version. I haven't listened to it yet, but I think it would be phenomenal because I'm sure he can read it like better than I did. But it really is just the childhood story. So it starts with him as a young boy and just kind of carries into young adulthood, not his entire life, but just his journey from, like I said, from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. But it really focuses on his friends, his family, some of the struggles that he faced, dealing with racism in his community, and how he sort of stumbled into boxing. It really was quite an accident. And his friend Lucky they're an interesting duo because he was very academic, went to college, became a writer, and Muhammad Ali kind of struggled in academics and things. So a really interesting friendship as well. But it's important, I think, to point out that it was written in cooperation with Muhammad Ali's family and his estate. So it has sort of their backing and their authorization as well. So there's artwork interspersed throughout. There are some spreads that are just absolutely gorgeous. The cover is super cool. So I would highly recommend this. I think anybody, not just to, someone who's interested in boxing, even though boxing definitely is a thread throughout the book and in, main focus for him. But any child who's interested in sports or famous people, or even, like I said, the whole family friendship, all of those dynamics are addressed. So there's lots and lots of different layers, and super, super great book. I've recommended it already to several people to give as gifts or just to read because it's awesome.
I decided to go with Wink by Rob Harrell. And this one is more for, I think, older middle grade, approaching tween territory even. It's about a boy named Ross who's in middle school. So of course it covers kind of the regular challenges of being a middle school student, but he has an additional challenge in his life. He was diagnosed with a rare form of eye cancer. So he's also dealing with like radiation treatments and losing his hair and all of that that comes with his cancer treatment. And it's actually based on the author's own experience. He also was diagnosed with the same cancer. So it lends obviously an authenticity and a realism to the book. But while it being very sort of heartfelt with that aspect, it also is about ultimately finding joy, and he makes some really good friends along the way and kind of embraces his own quirks and what's going on in his life. It also includes some comic art. Ross has a comic called Bat Pig, who is featured regularly and looks pretty fun. So yeah, I haven't read this yet, but I have it at home. I'm about to read it, and it sounded really, really good. And I think it would be a good one for reluctant readers as well.
The book I'm suggesting is on the older side of the kids spectrum for sure. But it's a great book. It's Genesis Begins Again by Alicia D. Williams. This might be one of my favorite books that I read. I don't know if I read it at the beginning of this year. I read it in the winter. And it's kind of one that I think about a lot. It kind of comes back up in my head. So Genesis is 13 years old, and she's dealing with kind of a wide array of problems. She's facing sporadic homelessness. Her family has a hard time kind of holding on to a home to live in. She hates her skin color. So she's always trying to kind of lighten her skin. And her dad is her hero and her everything, but he's also verbally abusive. So she's facing so many mountains in this book, and the way she kind of overcomes things and the journey she has to embracing and loving who she is so beautiful, and becoming her kind of own person on her way into like becoming a teenager is so heartfelt. It's heartwarming. It's well done. It's well written. It's won so many awards. It's fantastic. And the relationships that she has with people outside of her home, like her friends, her mom, her grandmother, are really, really well developed. So I love this book. It was really, really good. Heavy, but worth the read. So thanks for watching.